Hello, and welcome to Writer Wednesdays with Sara. I'm Sara R. Turnquist, multi-published clean historical romance author, and I wanted to do something a little special this week. Years ago, I tried my hand at publishing a collection of short stories. In my Convenient Risk series, I had these two supporting characters that were so fun to write, and I had this idea that I could create this series of short stories to more chronicle what was going on with them. So I did this more lighthearted collection, a short story for each month of a year, and I'm going to read the very first scene of one of those for you today. It comes from the month of February, and it's called Trust is Golden. Dorothy Miller fought the urge to snap the reins and encourage the aging horse to pick up her pace. But that would only increase the bumping of the cart. How would her own aging bones handle that? As it was, they ached for home, for a comfortable seat and her sweet Owen to dote on her. Just thinking of him brought a smile to her face. It always did. The old coot. The roof of their cabin peeked over the top of the hill. She was almost there. Shaking and ricketing, the wagon protested the final climb, but it was sturdy. Owen made sure of that. He wouldn't risk his Dorothy, as he said so often. Yes, he was a kind-hearted man, even if he was a lot of trouble. She smiled to herself as she pulled up to the simple log structure that was their home. And then she waited for Owen to come out, greet her, and take the horse to the barn. But nothing happened. No one came. So she waited. And waited. Was Owen all right? The old goat. He must be sleeping. Fine thing, that. She'd been working her hands till they calloused, and he was napping the afternoon away. But she couldn't be cross with him. He'd had his share of hardship over the years. She couldn't begrudge him some peace and rest after what he'd put that body of his through in his younger years as a ranch hand. Too many years abusing it. It took more effort than she'd have liked to stable the horse and secure the barn, but she did it, without thinking bad thoughts about her husband. Well, not too many, at least. She stifled a laugh in spite of the ache in her back. They did pick at each other, but that was their way. Opening the door slowly, she glanced about the cabin. There were no lanterns lit within. As the sun began to set, the interior had dimmed. She made quick work of remedying that when she tiptoed to the kitchen and pulled together a few foodstuffs to prepare a simple meal. Dare she rouse Owen to eat? Dare she not? If there was one thing she couldn't abide, it was a stomach growling, complaining it hadn't been fed on her watch. Nope, she'd wake him all right. There'd be no tummy grumbles in her bed tonight. She had just put the meager stew together and started it heating on the stovetop when a noise outside disrupted her concentration, or what was left of it. Who would visit at this hour? Owen, she called. She would much rather he receive than her. It was best. No response. Owen! Nothing. Well, now, didn't that beat all? He was dead asleep. She knew the kind, and it was just like him, too. She wiped her hands on her apron and moved toward the door. But as she neared the window, she spotted a figure. Blurred by the dimness and her declining night vision, the intruder moved into the barn. The barn? Was there a thief upon them, come to steal their horses from right under their noses? The cad! That man had another think coming if he thought she was going to stand by and let a common ruffian take her old mare. Why, she never! Owen! She called again. Whatever was the matter with that man? Did he have cotton in his ears? Uneasiness prickled up the skin on her arms, and she swallowed. Would it be up to her to defend their home? Could she do that? She closed her eyes. Dear Lord, give me the strength to do what I need to and the sense to know what not to. Then she snatched her broom, a fine weapon. She'd beaten back many a beady-eyed mouse with it, but a horse thief was not a mouse. Maybe they weren't so different, she told herself, both bullies, only this one was taller. Movement beyond the window betrayed that the man came toward the cabin. Did he think this humble house had valuables? Would he try to harm her and Owen? Even as she peered, she couldn't make out more than his form as he came closer. She pressed her back to the wall. No sense in giving away her position. She gripped the broomstick until her hands hurt. The moment that the scallywag stepped in this house, Her house, she'd whack him with this broom with all the force she could muster. Yes, that was a good plan. Sound. Doable. A thickness rose in her throat as the steps to the door creaked. She couldn't do this. The door latch jingled. She had to. She would. She raised the broom and closed her eyes. Wait, if she kept her eyes closed, how would she hit him square in his detestable face? Open eyes. Yes, that was better. The door swung inward, and she brought the broom down. It smacked the door so hard it sent a tremor through her arms, and she landed solid against the wall, all the wind rushing out of her. She gasped for breath. Someone spoke to her in a gruff voice. Dorothy? Hands were on her arm. She flung an elbow back. There was a satisfying "Hmph." She turned to face her attacker, and there was Owen, working to catch his breath. Owen? How? Why? How? Oh, dear! She dropped the broom and grabbed for his arm to help him stay upright. He held up a hand. I'll be fine. I'm sorry, but you were a horse thief. He looked at her, an eyebrow quirked. A horse thief? When? In a past life? No, just now when I saw... Well, you see, you... Oh, never mind. Her cheeks burned and she couldn't get the words out. He rumbled. Was he coughing? Fighting for breath? Had she killed him? Owen! She grabbed for his arm. He took her hand as he continued to shake, head down. After some moments, he looked at her at last. His whole face lit up as he released his laughter. Laughter? This was funny to him? Owen Miller, I might have killed you. She shook off his arm. He howled louder. Most certainly, my dear. Seems I deserved it, and then some, I'm sure. His eyes gleamed. You most certainly did. She crossed her arms. You scared me something terrible. His laughter faded, and he met her gaze. I apologize. I had no idea you'd be so concerned. Well, I thought you were asleep. She moved back to the kitchen to check on her stew. I hadn't a thought who would be traipsing around in our barn at this hour, unless it was someone up to no good. She shot him a look. Sounds like me, all right. He winked. She picked up a wooden spoon and began stirring the stew. It had started to burn. Couldn't anything go right this evening? I'm glad you're amused. His smile faded and he walked to her. Don't be mad. I won't live long enough to work it off. She couldn't help the grin that tugged at her lips when she peered at him. Maybe, but you could try. He rubbed her up her arms. I hereby solemnly swear I will work my hardest to make it up to you. The grin that had threatened finally overcame her features. Till death do us part. His own smile filled his face. She leaned into him and let the tension of the past several moments slip away. All was forgiven and forgotten. Except, where had he been? Pulling back, she opened her mouth to ask, Shall I set out the bowls? He looked at the pot. She found herself too tired and unwilling to further muddy the waters with another discussion. Perhaps it was his own business where he'd been. Maybe he'd just been for a ride or over to visit Mr. Hayworth. It was no matter. She sighed. Hope you like your stew a little on the burnt side. I'll take it, as long as I get to sit at the table with you. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great week, and I hope I see you back here next time for another Writer Wednesday with Sarah.